Good afternoon, everyone. Feel free to keep eating. We want to keep you on schedule so we can get everybody out on time. First, I'd like to echo Mr. Inman's comments and thank Belmont for helping us host this event, and my co-sponsor, FirstBank, for their expertise and resources that they had in putting all this together. This is kind of an exciting thing for me. When you go to a lot of conferences like I do, every once in a while someone kind of jolts you in terms of a speaker. And when I heard Dr. Singh, now I'm going to switch and call him Professor Singh. When I heard Professor Singh speak at a Forbes conference a few months ago, I just had to have him come to Nashville and talk to a group of both my clients and some of the clients of FirstBank and the good association that we have. You know, when you think back to 19th century England, I'm reminded about the Luddites and how they protested the automation of clothing with the loom and the protests that went around that. And I hear today the social outcry about artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect work, and cryptocurrency and how it's not going to affect anything, and blockchain technology. And I'm reminded of days in the early 90s when people questioned the impact that, or lack of impact, that the internet was going to have on our lives. And so this is a great opportunity for everyone here to kind of open their minds and get an education from one of the leaders in this industry. After Dr. Singh, Professor Singh spoke, I caught him out in the hallway after the crowd died down, and he had made a comment in his remarks. He said, someone that had invested $100 in Bitcoin back in 2010 be worth $150 million today. So my first question to him when I met him out in the hallway was, Dr. Singh, how many $100 Bitcoin purchases did you make? And he said, that's the problem, I made none, so I continue to speak. So among his accomplishments, Dr. Singh has been voted by the students as a distinguished faculty member at Harvard, which I think is probably the highest honor you can have as an educator. He is widely published and listened to. He was at a conference with Cigna last week. He was on CNN Sunday. And it just is like I said, it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn and get educated about something that will probably be impacting our children's children, you know, as we go on into time. So without much further ado, let's give a warm Nashville welcome, Dr. Singh.
Well, thank you, Tim. Very, very kind words. I want to start by thanking CapWealth Advisors for inviting me here, FirstBank for sponsoring this as well, and of course Belmont University for hosting us. What a wonderful venue. It's my first time in Nashville, and you know, I can see the warmth, and I you know, come to realize what you know, hospitality means. So the topic of our talk is blockchain, crypto, and AI. And I want to introduce artificial intelligence in the beginning, just to, you know, so when we think about different levers of change, you've got AI and blockchain. So, you know, these are the two main levers that are impacting our economies, our lives, in very fundamental ways. And when we look at AI, the machines are already here. And there is this very interesting clip I want to show you from just 2 weeks ago. There was a Google event, and their CEO, Sundar Pichai, gave this talk. And this short clip shows how far we've come along when it comes to artificial intelligence.
So let's go back to this example. Let's say you want to ask Google to make you a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So it's pretty remarkable that, computers now can achieve human level, conversational skills. They have the cognitive abilities. A few years ago we saw that world's chess champion was defeated by IBM's Deep Blue, but that was a different kind of intelligence. Where here you're combining the cognitive abilities with natural language processing, where the algorithms can understand what is being said, process it like the way humans would, and then use emotional language to communicate. So it's a major advance that I think is going to change how we look at these technologies and how we use them. So I often use Google Assistant at my home to order Uber, to ask other questions, but those are basic things. But here you've got something major happening, and it's already here, right? It's not something we have to wait for. So this is Elon Musk. There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better, right? So and this is a study by Oxford University. 47% of the jobs are at risk of being automated in the next 20 years. Self-driving trucks are going to hit us like a human-driven truck. So we've seen the experiments with Uber and others, and what is fascinating is that it took 100 years for the Industrial Revolution to basically replace or displace the agrarian economy, right? From the 1790s to 2010, you see this graph where the number of people working in agriculture is decreasing. But what's going to happen with artificial intelligence and some of these emerging technologies, that the speed is much higher, that the same sort of changes are going to happen within 10 years or 20 years. And the way we think about this is that there are these application programming interfaces, APIs we call them, and these APIs are now parceling out jobs. So when you've got someone calling an Uber, you have an API interfacing between the person calling for the Uber and the person who is the Uber driver, right? There's no human interaction between them. It's just the API that's saying, okay, go and meet this person here and here. So many of these jobs are being eaten away by automation and you know, it's happening at a rapid pace. But there is, and you know, I want to credit Tim O'Reilly for you know, some of these slides here, that there is a positive aspect to this. That technology is a solution to human problems, and we're not going to run out of human problems anytime soon, right? So human beings have always been creative, and we've always found ways of using technology to our advantage. So even though there is a threat that, okay, AI is going to replace radiologists, so we know that a radiologist may miss a tumor or a cancerous cell looking at an X-ray, but if you feed 10 million images to an AI, they're not going to get it wrong, right? They'll be better at this kind of a job than a human being. But at the same time, this is the World Health Organization saying that we're going to have a shortage of 12.9 million health workers in the next decades, right? So how do we solve this? Maybe we can use AI, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, telepresence, to address some of these issues, to address these shortages that we are facing. But the key point is that as a society, we have to think about that how are we going to reform our educational system to bring about these changes, right? So as we know that the economy is becoming more skill-based, our universities kind of have to evolve with that and really grapple with these changes to create new curriculum that would cater to that. So now I want to come to blockchain, which is another major lever that can be used for social change and to improve our lives in multiple ways. So I'm going to skip over this because Tim already mentioned the trivia question, but I want to start with this process of sending email versus money. So when you're sending out an email, you don't have a third party facilitating that. And the reason is that the email delivery is being governed by a protocol. It's called SMTP protocol. So that protocol facilitates sending of the email. And if I want to send money, then I need a third party in the middle. And someone said, why do we need that? Why can't we send money like we send email? And that's essentially what blockchain is facilitating. It's facilitating transfer of money. That's one use case. There are many others. But the money can be sent to an address from one address to a second address. And there's no third party, which means we have eliminated this trusted intermediary. So this is from 2009 when Bitcoin was invented. This was a white paper by this person or group of people known as Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who this is, but this abstract read, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. So what is double spending? Double spending is essentially that if I have a photograph in my, on my phone and I send you that photo, I still retain that photo, right? So if I had digital money on my phone and I sent you $100, what's it for someone to say that I still don't have it, right? So that's where the blockchain comes in. And the blockchain essentially is a ledger, a set of blocks where we are recording every transaction. And as you can see here, that so that's block 51, block 52, each block is pointing to a previous block. So it contains the address of the previous block. So they're linked. And that's why we call it a blockchain. And now these blocks contain transactions as they're happening. and they are replicated across millions and millions of computers around the world. So what that means is that if I wanted to go back and change a transaction that I did not send you the $100, then I would have to go and change it on all the previous blocks because they're linked, and I would have to change them on every single computer that's out there, which is very difficult to do, and let me explain why. So this is a graph of a hash rate. A hash is an algorithm that enables us to secure this blockchain. So we have these group of miners around the world who have computers, and they're maintaining these transaction histories, right? They're maintaining copies of these blocks. And each time, so a hash rate is how many hashes you can do per second. And here we have achieved a rate of 2 exahash. Exa is 18 zeros after that 2. So just to put this in perspective, if we had a supercomputer and we added that supercomputer to this network, try to manipulate what's going on, it would make no difference to this network of computers because it has more computing power than that supercomputer. So what if we were to add 500,000 supercomputers to this network? It would only change the structure of this network by 1%, right? So this is the amount of power that these miners are generating. And the key thing is they're distributed. There's no central authority or no central agency that is making this happen. People are doing it out of economic incentives, right? Every time they are supporting this network, they're earning Bitcoin in the case of the Bitcoin blockchain. Then there are other blockchains like Ethereum and there are many other people trying to create new ones. So the key benefits are that it's very reliable because you are able to validate the information that gets written on these blocks. It's replicated, so it's not stored on one server with one bank. It's replicated around the world on millions and millions of computers, and then it's always available. That if one node dies, if one computer dies, then the others are still there, so we can always have access to it. There's a degree of transparency that we can go and audit this. Many blockchains are public, so we can audit them and we can see whether two parties did in fact engage in a transaction. It's immutable because a bad actor cannot go and change something, right? It's permanent record. And then finally it's digital, so there are certain advantages of things being digital. So now I want to address some macro trends that are happening in this space. And these trends are, decentralization. And this book about the starfish and the spider is a very nice analogy here. If you have a spider and you cut off a leg, it's going to limp. But if you cut off a leg of a starfish, it's going to grow it back. If you cut the spider from the center, it dies. But if you cut a starfish from the center, you have 2 starfish. If you cut it 5 ways from the center, you have 5 starfish. So this is decentralization in nature that we are trying to emulate in the real world through the blockchain by creating decentralized enterprises, platforms, where you have, so I gave you the example that, okay, if one node goes down or one miner goes off the network, it doesn't really impact the ecosystem. It's still thriving, right? So it's very interesting how we already see this in nature, and now we're trying to do it for ourselves. The second major trend is open source. And we've known this for a long time, that open source can be as good, if not superior, to proprietary software. And but what's we've seen historically is that people who engaged in open source software in its development, the contributors, were doing it out of altruism. They did not have an economic incentive, so they would do it part-time. They would devote some time out of a social good mission. But now what we've seen with the blockchain is it's giving us the ability to mine tokens or pre-mine tokens. And we can now incentivize people who are creating open source software with these tokens. And it becomes even more lucrative than working for a Facebook or a Google to actually work on open source software, largely because you're incentivized now. And now the other trend is the shared hardware, where you no longer have a central server. There are stories in the news where people can be mining cryptocurrencies from their browsers on other people's computers that are idle. Or we can provision servers in the cloud in a distributed way. So this is another trend, that there's a move away from proprietary software, proprietary hardware, and things are becoming more and more distributed. The final trend I want to talk about is capital formation. Historically, if you wanted to succeed, if you were starting a business, a startup specifically, if you were in Silicon Valley, your likelihood of success is much greater than being in Boston or somewhere else. Why? Because that's where the capital is. So, raising money is a lot easier in Silicon Valley than anywhere else. So I was, come from Boston, a lot of smart people on our team from Harvard, MIT, but we had a very tough time raising money in Boston. We started a company 4 years ago, and I took a trip down to Silicon Valley and raised $1.5 million in over a weekend. Right? It was that simple. So what this trend of cryptocurrency, initial coin offerings using blockchain is doing is it's empowering anyone, regardless of where you are, to launch an ICO, initial coin offering. You can be in a village in Kenya, write a white paper like we saw, written by Satoshi Nakamoto, and you can announce to the world, this is what I want to do. I'm going to pre-mine or mine certain number of tokens, and this is going to be the price. And you can raise that money quite easily. You don't even have to leave your home. So that's the power of this distribution, and you can see this. And that the blue bars here are equity financing for startups, and the red bars are the ICO funding. The ICO funding is dwarfing the equity funding for blockchain firms. And this trend is only going to continue, right? This is, and the VCs may be out of a job very soon, because the VCs demand board seats, they demand control of the company, whereas when you're doing an ICO, those concerns are not there, right? Because it's a decentralized network you're creating anyhow. So no one really has control other than the people who own the tokens. So now I want to touch on some examples of innovation that we are seeing happen on the blockchain. So the one term that is used is DLT, which is the distributed ledger technology. And this is very useful as a technology whenever you've got multiple transactions and assets that are being recorded on different databases. They don't have consistency, they lack confidence in terms of whether it's right or wrong, the data that you have. And then you're deploying a lot of resources to manage all of that. You've got human resources, human capital, trying to figure things out. Still, they're making mistakes. And you're trying to manually reconcile what these things are. So this is a very important use case for blockchain. Because one thing that I didn't mention earlier was that when I send a payment from, using blockchain from one cryptocurrency address to another, surely that's an electronic transaction. But the argument could be that, I could do that with PayPal. I could do that with a wire transfer electronically, right? So, but the problem is that, yes, I can initiate a transaction electronically, but the reconciliation still requires human intervention, right? But what the blockchain solves is that the reconciliation also happens automatically. So that is now in much of the developing world, the title registries are often hard to maintain. The governments don't do a good job. So a small story, my family purchased some land in India to build a factory, and it was a very large piece of land, and a couple of years later they found out that someone else owned the title as well. And this is a persistent problem in the third world, and we're seeing companies working with the governments to secure these title registries on the blockchain. And there's one company working with Barclays Bank because unless there is a clean title, hard to get loan against that. So Barclays is working with them to issue loans as well. and it's fascinating, what we are seeing happen. Then this is closer to home here. Delaware authorizing stocks on the blockchain, that you can now legally maintain a registry of your shareholders on a blockchain. So and Wyoming has recently passed similar bills, and we're going to see more and more of this happening. So these are progressive governments that are trying to take steps to make things happen. Then we are seeing that when diamonds are being mined, you've got people concerned that are the diamonds coming from a conflict zone, or are there human rights abuses happening? So they want to stay away from them. But how do you do that? So now they're putting the whole provenance of the diamond on the blockchain, so you can actually see which mine it came from, where was it manufactured, and how did it come to the retail locations, all on the blockchain. I recently started a podcast called Masters of Blockchain, and in that podcast I interviewed a company that is doing the same thing for artwork. So you're buying something at an auction, a piece of art, and generally it's a very research intensive process for the auction house, and they charge you 40% premium on the actual price of the art to do all that research, and still they get it wrong. So they're trying to create a registry for any kind of artwork or collectibles, so that you can say, okay, this was sold at Christie's, but before Christie's it belonged to this family, and you can actually trace it right on the blockchain, and so that creates less friction. Another issue they solve by doing this is that unless you have money in the escrow and a large amount, existing relationship with the auction houses, you can't play, you can't really participate in the auction, especially in some of the more prestigious ones. So by having this kind of a process, you could actually put this on the internet, the whole auction process. And so, very interesting how the same registry process that we see in the land titles with the diamonds is being applied to other industries as well. So another very interesting use case is micropayments. And nothing is going to benefit more than the media. So when we look at the media, this is what the ad revenue looks like for all the media, major publishers or even smaller publishers, that the advertising revenue is declining and the newspapers are struggling to survive, right? So the question is that, if you look at where the money is going, where is the revenue shifting, there are two players. You've got Google with 44% of the revenue in 2017, and Facebook 18%. That's 61% cumulative online revenue being taken by just 2 sources online. So now, if you are going to be a New York Times or a local paper here in Nashville, you have really 2 choices. You can create a paywall, and you can charge everyone a monthly subscription to access that content. So unless you are a major player, that's not going to work. People are not going to pay a monthly subscription. Or the second option is that you can advertise online, but that requires having catchy headlines. So there's clickbait. People click on your link, they come to your site. So if we, and you know, as a country, we're very concerned about the quality of the news. So why do, you know, so that is also not an option. So the third option is micropayments, that we say, okay, every time you're going to read an article, you pay me 10 cents. So no one minds paying 10 cents, but that is very hard to do with credit cards or with the current payment infrastructure we have, because you need that trusted third party in the middle. They're also going to want to cut. So with the cryptocurrency, you can install a crypto wallet in your browser. So every time I go to a news site, I can pay 10 cents. It works seamlessly. It is paid seamlessly out of my browser wallet to the news site. So this is something we'll see catching on. And I think it's an important trend. So now I want to present a case study, how you future-proof a business, and this is something that we are doing by disrupting ourselves. So just to give you some context, I launched a business in the Harvard Innovation Lab in 2014, and I was seeing a trend toward artificial intelligence, and there was a growth in that sector, and companies were having a very hard time finding credible data scientists. And even today, if you want to hire a data scientist, they are very hard to find. It'll take you 3 to 6 months to hire one full time. And there've been, I know many people at Google and Alphabet where they're paying upwards of $500,000 a year to hire a PhD who's a data scientist with publications. And on top of that, they're paying stock options. So Massachusetts, where I live, produces some of the finest minds at MIT and other universities. And 80% of them move to Silicon Valley right after they graduate, because these kind of incentives are being offered to them. So we said, let's create an Uber for data scientists, and that where you can actually request a data scientist on demand. And so I presented a business case to people at Harvard Business School, and they said, great idea, but where are you going to find these people? And so we were lucky, we were early enough, we were first to market, that today we have 30,000 of them on our platform, the Xperfy. And so this platform has these folks, and we were lucky to be recognized by TechCrunch, Forbes, and others who were calling us a McKinsey in the cloud, or an Uber for data scientists. And so this culminated into a consulting marketplace where today companies like Deloitte, PwC are coming, and they're requesting talent, and they can request it by the hour. And similarly, we had a training marketplace where people could upskill. So we have clients like health insurance companies like Cigna using our platform to upskill their workers to become data scientists. But with the blockchain, we saw that things are going to become decentralized. So we said we should disrupt ourselves before we get disrupted by someone else. So this was a mission that we need to create a network of markets. We have the plumbing. Let's allow anyone to create these kind of marketplaces on top of the blockchain. So the idea was that, what are the pain points? What are we trying to avoid by creating a decentralized marketplace? So credit card fees is one. When you are charging credit card, or rather accepting payments using a credit card, you'll pay anywhere from 3 to 4% in fees. You've got declined credit cards, so you lost some revenue. You've got cross-border payments that you're making. So our consultants are all over the world. We have consultants in countries like Switzerland, China, India, Australia, Brazil. So it's very painful to send money to these people every week or every month. Then there is fraud and spam that happens. So we lose money that way. There's disputes that happen and then there are fake accounts that get created. So these are pain points that are shared by all centralized marketplaces. So by going the decentralized route, you can avoid fraud and spam by saying that we're going to tokenize every account. Anyone who wants to create an account is going to have to do token deposits. And the more transactions you do, the more business you do, the better reputation you have. We give you a reputation score, and then you can get back your tokens, or you have fewer tokens in the network. When there's dispute, and we were just talking about this on our table, that there is arbitration by the community, that the community that is holding the tokens can vote, and they can resolve the disputes collectively. And then because people are staking their tokens when creating accounts, you're going to have fewer fake accounts because it costs money to create an account. And then credit card fees, declines, cross-border payments, like these things go away because this cryptocurrency is sending money from one address to another. So you eliminate the banks and you eliminate the fees. And we are allowing anyone to create their own marketplaces using very easy wizards and interfaces. And so that's just one concrete example of why a business would want to go the decentralized route, because by eliminating a centralized infrastructure, you're saving on money, fees, and so forth. So I want to end here and take your questions.
Just for simplification, artwork, if you have an original Matisse, how does that get translated into a blockchain transaction? Is it digitized? How do you go from something you can hold in your hand and look at into the blockchain?
So yeah, so what's going to go on the blockchain is going to be the metadata, that there are some identifying marks on this painting that we need to record. We need to record the provenance, where it came from, those kind of characteristics, the metadata that you would see in an auction catalog. Plus, you could obviously digitize the print as well and attach that to the blockchain as well.
But it can't be subject to the subjective eye of the art curator, right?
Yes.
Somebody else's subjective eye would see it differently. So does it get photographed?
It could get photographed. It would be a decision of the folks who are working on that protocol. So all of these use cases we are talking about, they require some kind of a protocol. Like email requires SMTP to send an email. So whoever is designing that protocol is going to make those decisions that what do I want to include in this protocol? What do I want to capture? And so that's going to be a function of, so you could have two different protocols for art curation, or and they both can be very different. Yes.
Financial institutions will likely want to try to get in on this in some way, but obviously they don't want to be disruptive. Have you found that they are pushing back or trying to adapt to this new blockchain type of economy?
Yeah. So the question is that are financial institutions, because they're being disrupted, are they pushing back on this? So some are, but by and large, we are seeing that they are embracing this technology because they see the value in it. Because these companies spend millions of dollars or billions of dollars every year on back office operations. Even stock exchanges like NASDAQ are they have a major blockchain department initiative where they are building products. So NASDAQ, for example, I interviewed one of their product folks for blockchain 2 weeks ago, and he was telling me that they have a product even for voting in the annual meetings, because you've got shareholder meetings happening, and that process is quite cumbersome. So they are rolling out a blockchain-based product for voting during annual meetings. So these financial companies are thinking way ahead. In Boston, Fidelity has a huge blockchain department as well. Yes.
So say I got paid in extra coin. If I wanted to spend it, would I have to go to like a fiat exchange or something? Like how would you spend it in like the real world?
Yes. So these cryptocurrencies, they get traded on exchanges. So if you have to buy a currency, you would just like you want to buy Apple stock. You go to an exchange and you buy it there. And then in the case of ExpertCoin, it has a utility function. So there are two types of tokens, broadly speaking. You have utility tokens and you have securities. So a utility token has a utility within a given network. A security token can have a utility, but it also, you could have, instead of, issuing stock on paper, you could issue stock as a token, right? So that's a security token. So in the case of ExpertCoin, the utility is that it is allowing for governance of a wider network, right? So people can use it to vote, resolve disputes. They can obviously use it for payments, right? So there are a lot of different ways in which these currencies get used within the network. So you could purchase them at an initial coin offering. You can purchase them from an exchange. But then the actual utility is going to be back in the network. That's where you would use it. However, there are certain currencies meant for payments, right? So we were discussing earlier on our table about a cryptocurrency called Monero. There's another one called Zcash. These are called privacy coins, where if I had to send money to someone, no one can trace it. No one can tell that I sent it, because my identity is encrypted. And unless someone has that private key, they cannot decrypt it. Whereas if I send money to you on blockchain, then anyone can go to this blockchain explorer and actually see when someone sent it, from which address to which address. Now, they cannot tell who those people are, but we can see that, okay, it went from this address to this address. Yes.
So are there specific exchanges that are already set up to exchange this, and how are they regulated?
Yeah. So there are numerous exchanges that are set up, and just to give you a perspective, Binance is an exchange that recently relocated to Malta, I believe, and their revenue or earnings are greater than Deutsche Bank. This is a 2-year-old, 3-year-old entity, right? So these exchanges are highly profitable, and there are a number of them out there. They are not regulated right now because every government is trying to wrap their head around regulation, right? They don't know. But then you have certain jurisdictions like Mauritius that are taking regulation quite seriously. They're actually working on creating laws on the books on how to regulate these companies. So companies are relocating to these friendly jurisdictions. And in our case, because the laws were unclear in the U.S., even for ExpertCoin, how it's going to be regulated, we went to Cayman Islands to form our entity. And so, but the SEC, the CFTC, you've got FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. all of these agencies are, working often in silos, often together, to come up with some regulation. The problem is that the technology is moving at a lightning pace, and the regulators can't keep up with that speed, right? So it takes a while before the regulators catch up.
Walk me through, Amazon has their own coin, it has their own ICO. We want to go, we purchase something through Amazon. They're basically a distributor for everybody else in the world. Mm-hmm. Does everybody else in the world have to be on this network for that to actually trace, walk me through how they get paid? If you're doing it all through crypto.
Yeah. So it's very simple that if we were to if we design this properly, right? It all comes down to the design of the network. You go to Amazon, you have your credit card in their wallet. You could also have your cryptocurrency address in the wallet, your Amazon wallet. When you buy something, Amazon can ask you, you want to use your credit card or you want to use your cryptocurrency that we've created, right? So assuming they created their own coin. You say, no, I want to use the cryptocurrency to pay for this. So that comes, let's say your wallet has no cryptocurrency. So the item is $100. You deposit $100 using a credit card or bank account. And Amazon goes off to the exchange and buys that cryptocurrency worth $100 for you. And now that gets paid to the guy in France or China or wherever the vendor is, right? And because now it can be paid immediately to them. Now that person sees that cryptocurrency in their wallet instantaneously, almost instantaneously. Now they say, no, I want to cash out in my local currency. They can go to the exchange seamlessly and trade it for their local currency. So this is how, I think eventually how this is going to work. Right now, there's no one doing this, at least not to my knowledge. But this is how I envision, as we are building our own network, that we would like it to work. Yeah, there's a question there.
What are the skills and attitudes that are not being taught right now to prepare young people for all of these disruptions, and from an educational side?
Yeah, no, this is a question quite close to my heart, because I think we're not doing enough when it comes to our curriculum. And I come from Harvard, and Harvard is no exception. That there is the coursework that is being taught is still not geared towards what happens in the real world, what happens with these technologies. So I think we have to rethink our curriculum completely, and something that companies are doing, right? So for example, we have 300 odd people at Cigna using our platform to upskill themselves. So for example, if you are a database administrator, your job is in jeopardy or it already disappeared because things are moving to the cloud. And in the cloud, you don't need a database administrator, right? So that person is much better off learning a new technology or new skills. So the problem is that the courses don't exist, the curriculum doesn't exist. The faculty that are teaching these courses are teaching them at a level that is very theoretical, not practical often, right? So there are obviously exceptions everywhere. So I think we need to involve the industry and ask the industry what the needs are, and then design the curriculum. I think that would be very beneficial. Yes.
So how does the U.S. government regulate all this, specifically the IRS? Say I've got $100 million in a foreign country, and I convert it to cryptocurrency, and then I have the ability to move that anywhere. They have no way of knowing who I am or where it's going.
Yeah. So IRS has given some guidelines that this is all taxable. the cryptocurrency when right. So you know that is very very broad as a guideline. But the thing is that if I am holding money offshore with the new tax law changes. And you know, we had to study this to do our own structuring when we created our entity. That money earlier could exist there forever, right? But no more. Now you have to repatriate it, or it's going to be taxed quite heavily, right? So the question is that can they find out? Can the IRS find out that you indeed have something in a wallet? And the answer is that it would depend on the laws of that jurisdiction. In most instances, all the credible exchanges are asking for KYC information, know your customer information, like any bank would, especially when you are above a certain threshold. IRS subpoenaed an exchange here in the US called Coinbase. And so Coinbase is one of the few exchanges that are regulated in the U.S. But they only trade three or four currencies. And so IRS went to them and said, "Give us all your record of your 10 million customers." And they pushed back, and then they said, "Okay, give us the records of everyone who's traded more than $20,000 or right." So this matter went to court, and that's what was decided. So. I wouldn't be surprised if they are keeping a close eye on this, and they will be, looking at it even more closely as they become more sophisticated.
As far as investing in these currencies, all the big stories are in the early arrivals. We get an ICO pitched around every week. I see one fly by.
Yeah.
Where does that fall in the scheme of things as far as opportunity?
Yeah, no, I think it's very hard to predict which project is really going to work. So when I'm thinking about investments, I'm thinking about backing a team and looking at the product that team has, just like a traditional VC may look at a project, right? So, so I think that's how one should think about it. And you're right that there's so many of these projects out there. It's hard to predict what is going to be successful. Yeah. Yes.
Dr. Singh, I get the artificial intelligence and I get blockchain, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of companies. But when you're talking about transferring money throughout the world, you started talking about all the different currencies. Now, right now, there's a fairly good currency exchange. Sometimes it's exaggerated by certain presidents, but it's a pretty good system. So why isn't the currency, let's say dollars or yuan, pound, French francs, why do you need this third piece of the transaction, which can vary wildly? You put your $100 in a few years ago, you $150 million, but if you put it in December, you've now got $50.
Yeah, so no, this is another great question. The question is that if we already have a dollar or other currencies, then why these cryptocurrencies? So the answer is that we are not using them merely for payments. We're using them for innovation. And companies are creating these networks that require these tokens for governance, for other uses. But even for payments, when you look at the third world countries, so countries like Latin American countries, Venezuela, Argentina, where the horror stories where you've got inflation is so high that what you've got today, it may be worthless tomorrow. And in India, the Prime Minister of India, Modi, decided one fine day that, I'm going to demonetize the currency. What that means is, he said, anyone with bills of certain denomination or more, those bills are worthless. You need to trade them in. You've got 30 days or 60 days to trade them in, and after that they're going to be worthless. And you had these huge lines outside banks. Many people died in stampedes, and many people lost a lot of money. And then the ATMs ran out of money. So the economy suffered. Poor people who relied on cash suffered, right? So when you've got governments making arbitrary decisions, then these kind of currencies make sense. Then cryptocurrency makes sense. If you go to Latin America, Bitcoin adoption is very high. Surely there is volatility, but volatility is there until there is liquidity, right? When the liquidity increases, then the volatility will decrease, right? This is just a law of nature, and I think the question, your original spirit of the question, is well taken, but we are lucky to live in the United States where the currency is stable, but a large section of the world lives in areas where currency is not stable. Even their national currency is volatile. So those people are trying to use these cryptocurrencies as a way to protect against their own governments.
Dr. Singh, as I understand it, the fundamental purpose of money is to buy goods and services, whether it's a financial asset or any other type of asset. And you're supposed to have enough money in the economy for the goods and services you have. So if the economy picks up by 3%, you want to put 3% more money into the economy to keep it going. Where is that regulation in cryptocurrency in terms of having more or less of the cryptocurrency there are goods and services for the purchase at the end of the day?
Yeah, so oftentimes when cryptocurrencies are produced, they are finite in number. So for example, there can only be 22 million Bitcoins, no more. But the question that you're really pointing to is around regulation, that there is some central bank, the Fed, deciding on whether I'm going to increase interest rates, decrease them. I want to, or the Treasury is saying I'm going to print more money, less money. But here, because it's decentralized, you are not going to have one actor deciding anything. So this is both the advantage and disadvantage, that the disadvantage is that we cannot regulate, but that's also the advantage, that the governments cannot come and say that give us your data, or give us certain assets, because or shut down a network like a Bitcoin, right? No one could shut it down. So I guess with everything we do, there are both advantages and disadvantages, and here decentralization is seen as an advantage for the most part, despite these other concerns.
More questions?
Just on your point about being in Venezuela, investing in Venezuelan currency, and then wanting to have some stability to take it, why wouldn't you just transfer that into U.S. dollars, which are more stable? So why couldn't, like, the United States government just create a decentralized platform that could seamlessly transition into the U.S. dollar as the local reserve?
Yeah, the local government in most cases would not allow it. That you cannot hold dollars unless you're ultra wealthy, that you can have offshore accounts. Most people, and this person I heard tell a story once that in Argentina, they were out shopping in grocery stores, and the mother got paid and they went out buying groceries quickly so that the price would not rise. And as they were shopping, they were increasing the prices of the goods. So that's the kind of inflation we're talking about in these countries. And then you could not go and just say, oh, let me just go buy US dollars, because that facility is not available. There's regulation preventing you from doing that, but no regulation preventing you from opening up a wallet online and buying cryptocurrency.
Okay. We are going to have a media event in about 20 minutes where the media will have some opportunities to ask questions. Some of the professors from Belmont, any of you would like to stick around and be part of that, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much, Dr. Singh.
Thank you.